You're very welcome back as we discuss and talk all things Ulster-Scots. I'm Alistair Patterson and I'm delighted once again to be joined by Matthew Warwick from the Ulster-Scots Community Network. Matthew, you're very welcome back with us again.
Thank you.
And we have Brian Wilson here, who is director with the now well-established and well-known Belfast International Tattoo. So Brian, you're very welcome with us here this evening. I'm going to take a few minutes here, and in particular to sort of think about our pipe band world. And I know, Brian, this is something that you're very passionate about. You know, is there more that the Ulster-Scots community or agency or, you know, the programming bodies that are there could be doing to maybe help and assist some of our pipe bands, in particular to achieve the success that they're getting?
The pipe band world and the Ulster-Scots community are working really well together, and there's lots of teaching tuition fundings out there which are helping a lot of bands stay on the road and bring in the next generation. For us, ones that are in the older generation group getting. Both from teaching pipe and drumming and drum majoring, which is my forte, and yours, of course. But yeah, I think it's really good scheme that's going really, really well and seems to be working really, really well for the pipe band community. But it also in other bands as well. They fund teaching right across all the spectrums of bands, which is fantastic. The pipe band world, I think, takes always peaks and then dips and peaks and dips over like a 5-6 year period, I have found. So I think we're in a slight dip at the minute, but I do see really good groundwork doing and getting bands that have been sort of taking a little hiatus to coming back onto competition scene. But the one thing I always find with pipe bands is that we're nearly too focused on competition.
Yes.
And I never think it's a great thing, personally. Road bands, do they have more fun than the competition bands? That's a topic for another day, maybe. But, you know, the competition is very focused and it's very intense, you know, because when you enter a competition, you want to do the very best and you want to be successful. But that's a huge pressure on players and young people, and we all have lives. I now have a life after pipe bands, which I didn't when I was competing, but we have a life after pipe bands and people have a life with pipe bands, so you have to make that balance that you can't do 3 nights a week practice in grade 1 and sustain that for longevity. You just can't do it.
There's no doubt there's a lot of time and effort goes in. It's like everything in all walks of life. If you want to achieve something, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes dedication. And again, and equally with that, it takes funding.
You look at the size of our marching band movement, 700 or 800 bands across all the genres, across the province. If you tried to replicate that, if it was wiped out tomorrow and the government wanted to start music in the community with instruments, with rehearsal facilities, with tutors, and all the infrastructure that comes with it, it would cost hundreds of millions to replicate.
Yeah.
All that history, all that expertise, all that knowledge. And so much of it is done in a voluntary capacity.
I think, you know, we've all seen it and we've seen it firsthand, you know, the benefits that are coming from, you know, a lot of those tuition schemes that have been going on. And in particular, there has been an increase in them over the last sort of few years. And it's great to see that. And I think, you know, you mentioned, Brian, about, you know, the competition bands versus the road bands and such. But you know, we've just come through a season there. You know, we're in July and August, and we're talking about, you know, our marching bands and such. We're actually starting to see the benefits. We're seeing, you know, the improvements. I feel, and I don't know what the rest of you sort of seen, and you know, your various venues that you're at over, you know, the last few weeks. Like, you know, are you seeing that coming straight through onto the road bands now?
Definitely, there's more and more better quality bands on the road. And I'd like to highlight the accordion in particular, and because I talk to tattoos all over the world now and in my role as tattoo director, is that we're unique. They don't have marching band, accordion bands overseas. And when I say I have an accordion band, the tattoo, they're going, well, that can't be very nice, so they're just standing there. I says, no, they're marching. A marching accordion.
Yeah.
They don't get it. And now I see, the Pride of the Birches is in Canada at the minute, at the 12th of Pride of the Birches.
Very good.
So they're in demand overseas because they're unique
Yeah.
in that as well. So, and again, as I said, we talked to all the tattoos around the world, and they're all saying about the quality of bands here in Northern Ireland that they don't have in any other country in the world. So we should be very proud of that, and we should be a selling point to the agencies about the quality of our musicians here and our bands on the road that nowhere else in the world has.
Yeah, and I think it's you're right. It's something we should be celebrating. It's something we should be championing. It's something we should be putting out there, and at every opportunity. Should it be for the inauguration of the American president? There's a pipe band there that's providing the music as the background. That's the sort of thing that we sort of, I know that's putting it on a very big stage, but we have it. Like, we have the best of the best.
But if you think of major global TV events in the last couple of years, we had Jubilee, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations, and then unfortunately the other side of that coin you had the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral and the late Queen Elizabeth's funeral, and then the coronation of King Charles III. At the centre of all those big noteworthy historical events, what happened in London and the various other venues? There were marching bands on the street. Music. There were pipe bands, there were brass bands, military bands, and I know a good number of people involved in those military bands who started off in their local flute bands in round me. And it's amazing to think that I remember going to the music centre in Bally and Ballymena whenever I was still at primary school for a wee bit of music theory lessons to try and to help and whatever else to learn what was going on. And the guy that I was there friendly with, we were the same age. He was in another band. He's a better player than me, but he left school at 16 and he pursued a career in military bands as a musician. And he has played at all those global events. He has toured the world.
Yeah.
And what a lifestyle and a career that has given him. And if he had never joined his local flute band, that never would have happened. And we don't sell these stories, these success stories.
It's the opportunities.
The opportunities that, and not just the opportunities of performing on stage to global audiences, the opportunities of the friendship and the camaraderie and the links for life and the amount of relationships and everything else that comes out of being in a band. And we need to publicise that. We need to draw attention to it more.
But that's something I think, we as people within our communities need to do a lot better as well. Because sometimes we don't champion those within our own community. We don't put them out there. We don't celebrate them enough. And I think it's something probably, Brian, you and I can relate to this. We've been overseas. We've been to different events, and you know what? We're actually more highly thought of sometimes overseas than what you would be at your own local event. And people bring you there and they want you there, and they're celebrating the fact that you're there.
But even through the tattoo, all the military bands that come to Northern Ireland are on recruiting drive all the time, and the RAF probably had the most success in recruiting people from the tattoo, people that they've met at the tattoo. I was in London last weekend, and I don't know, there was about a dozen people out of the household come up and said, "Hello, Brian, how are you? I'm from home." It was fantastic. All coming through, as you say, our flute bands, our brass bands here in Northern Ireland, and going on to the biggest stage in the world and the biggest pageantry in the world.
Yeah. And it's coming right through that grassroots Ulster-Scots network that we have. There's lots of diversity there. There's lots of people involved. There's lots of different, people from different backgrounds involved. It's not just purely Ulster-Scots as well. Let's be honest about it. But it's about getting it out there. It's about getting that and celebrating and championing it and getting it there. And again, it's something that, possibly, government departments do need to be looking at it a bit more and having more discussions around it, and, our political representatives taking it, right to that top table.
But I think we need to go back to our bands as well, because, our band scene's very much marching up and down the street at band parades and stuff. But there's so much more a band can do and achieve as well as that. I look at the bands that are coming in internationally to the tattoo every year, and they rarely march up and down the street, but they have all these elaborate performances put together, and you know, they're using theme tunes to soap operas. They're branching out to every genre of music that they can possibly do, and it's a lot. And I'm not saying that the band on the road's not entertaining, but it can be much more than that as well. So I think there's an appetite for it as well. But again, the bands need to buy into it. A lot across Europe, there's these massive band championships where they go into stadiums and they have a 3-day, they have an orchestral, they have a set march, and then they have a free-for-all day that they can basically do whatever they want. My goodness, if our bands could see that in action, it would take us up to another level. Our music's really, really high, but you know, they tend to just form a circle or march in a straight line. So there's much more, and it would give them a wider scope of going to other places as well.
Look, there's lots of things I think, and there's lots of rethinking in some ways that needs to happen. And it's back to that whole thing about, you know, competitions. It can't all be about competitions. We have to think outside that box, and that's something that I'm trying to push on, and that's the whole thing. But the one thing that I would say within the pipe band world, or within any band world, you know, flute band, accordion, brass, whatever, it's that family aspect.
Yeah.
It's that family dynamic that we bring to it. And we're one big family. We're like all families. We don't always get on the best of times. We can all have an odd fallout. But, you know, is there more that we can do within our Ulster-Scots community to sort of, you know, to develop that family as well?
I think so. I'm involved with the Flute Band Association Northern Ireland, which is the part music band, so the bands that have flutes ranging from piccolo right down through to the big massive bass flutes and everything else. They would play a range of sort of classical music, traditional marches, modern music. We had an entertainments contest there in in June. Yeah, the start of June, and we have a prize for new arrangements on the day. And this year, bands, Ballygowan Concert Flute Band showcased an arrangement of The Who, Pinball Wizard.
Okay.
Last year it was Madness, Baggy Trousers, with full percussion and glockenspiels and xylophones and everything. You know, it's something, and timpani drums, it's something to behold. Churchill Band from Londonderry, they did a Meatloaf medley that really went down well in the day. So it's very different to maybe playing your standard marches or traditional folk songs or whatever it may be. So it's out there. How do we get that to a bigger audience?
Yes.
We stream it on our Facebook page and on YouTube and things like that, and they get big numbers. And I think we don't do enough to showcase that. And I'm going to put on one of my many hats here and speak for, we have something here unique in Northern Ireland that they don't have anywhere else in the world. It's called a lambeg drum.
Yeah.
You know, it's not made or played anywhere else in the world, maybe for good reason, some people would suggest, but it's something born out of a military tradition that here our Unionist and Orange community, Ulster-Scots community, whatever you want to call it, embraces, is very proud of. It's something that American tourists, whenever the tour group comes into our centre, I always leave them with a wee blatter in the lambeg drum, and they can't get enough of it. Because what do they have in America? Their first musical traditions were fife and drum, military traditions. So there's a commonality there. There's similarity, but it's different at the same time. And that's something that I don't think we market.
But is that something, you know, again, as we as Ulster-Scots people don't sell those things enough?
Absolutely.
We don't put it out there. We don't champion it. We don't, you know, we're not telling the world about it. It happens every year, but all of a sudden we just turn up.
We're here having conversations about how we can advance our cause and our interests and everything else, and talking about we needing a bigger budget and we need people in posts and everything else. But we need a different mentality. We need to get out there and promote ourselves far better. And that starts now. That starts with being confident in what we do and who we are, and the experiences that have brought us to this place. The traditions that surround what we do and why we do it, and being able to go out there and tell anybody in the world, this is what we do, this is something unique to Northern Ireland. We're immensely proud of it. We're not just proud of it, we have huge emotion invested into it. And I think because of that, sometimes that prohibits us from allowing us to showcase it, to tell our stories and to push it out there to a wider audience. But we don't need budget to do that, we just need a mindset.
Yeah, it's getting that mindset right, and it's getting people that, you know, they do, right, this is us, this is who we are, like, we're going for this.
Confidence.
Yeah.
But
Cultural
unless our
confidence.
tourist boards, the Northern Ireland Tourist Board or Tourism Ireland, get on board with that as well, because they have the bigger picture. They have the resources to publicise this all over the world, in every country. And if they're not promoting us, we need to be pushing their people to promote us in the way that we want promoted. Not just a 2-second clip here and there and saying, oh, we've bands. No, we have the best bands in the world. We have the most bands in the world. And we're out and very proud of it. As you say, we should be shouting this from the rooftops more and more. But the agencies that have the resources to send that message out are not doing it for us. So we need to be campaigning towards those as well.
But, you know, that's a job that we have to do. And I think it has to start with us as people, as Ulster-Scots people. You know, we have to start putting that message out there. Like, I had the most interesting conversation at work the other day, and it's a pure perception, you know, that everybody within a band to start with, you know, they're either one side or the other. That was the, you know, first part of the conversation. You know, you're either a Protestant or a Roman Catholic. That was part of that conversation. And then it was a case of, well, if you're in a pipe band and you're a drummer, you know, all of a sudden, sure, these are only marching bands, you only do this, that, and the other, you know, and it's all these things, and it's just these perceptions. And, you know, we should be in a position now where we can actually stand up and tell the world who we are, what we are, you know, what we're doing, but also be welcoming. Welcome everybody else into it, you know. Bring this, that we can actually, look, here's something, get interested in it, become part of it. And I think we have to try to start to do that.
Arguably, our bands are oldest sort of community cultural arts organisations. They predate many other things here, and they've been going for hundreds of years, and it's important that they keep going into the future, that we keep bringing the young people in to keep these traditions going and pushing forward. But also, I think it's very, very important that we show that there are career paths there.
Yeah.
There is a future. Going, picking up that instrument, starting that activity. This is for fun, it's for enjoyment. You'll make friends, you'll go places, you'll see things, you'll have experiences. But also, there's a livelihood that can come with that. There is a chance to make a career out of doing something you love. And that positivity, we often are very poor at promoting and pushing out there.
I think, you know, and I know we have touched to that on previous conversations and you know, with other people you know, that I've spoken to over the last number of series, but, you know, it's that about getting, you know, people involved and getting, you know, everybody sort of going in a general, you know, good direction. But it's also, whenever you get involved with a band, you know, it's like I said earlier, you become part of a family. You become part of a setup. And again, within our Ulster-Scots community and our Ulster-Scots, you know, the network that's there, you know, we are part of one big family. And that's what we can do to make that better and move it forward. But I'm going to sort of come back and I'm sort of staying on the topic of bands and our events and different things. And if we, you know, focus particularly on this, you know, this culture period that we're going through, you know, as in, you know, around the marching season, you know, is there things that our Ulster-Scots community could do better? Is there things, you know, there's the different events that happen, and, you know, we all see the headlines coming around, you know, certain things, you know, even bonfires be one of them, you know, different activities, and we know you've mentioned it before about the Schomburg Society and what they have done, you know, particularly in Kilkeel. Is that the sort of thing that, you know, we need to look at throughout Northern Ireland to sort of try and improve some of those cultural events that we have?
I think so. I think so. It's marrying together the tradition with making it more attractive to a wider audience and to, you know, casting the net wider to bring more people in and get them involved. If we look at the example you mentioned bonfires, the Craigie Hill bonfire in Larne. Tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, journeyed to see that over the course of the week or whatever before it was set on fire. They had carnival rides. They had like a live outdoor music performance. No, it wasn't marching bands, unfortunately. It was a bit more sort of dance music or something like that. I'm too old to understand exactly what was happening, but there were thousands of people there. It was like a festival, and fair play to the organisers, because that was all done with virtually no public funding or assistance. That was done through fundraising, and thankfully everybody, it all went off. No property was damaged. Nobody was hurt. That's wonderful. Did the sort of symbolism of the 11th night bonfire get a wee bit lost in all the hullabaloo and those other additional activities? Some would say yes, some would say no. And that's it. You know, our bonfires in particular are symbolic. That, you know, they were there to herald the arrival of King William in the 14th of June 1690 as he arrived in Carrickfergus, en route to the Boyne, etc., etc. They have grown into something completely different, and that's what happens. Traditions change, they evolve, and everything else. But I think there's the like of the bonfires in particular. There's a chance to make them have a wider appeal, but keeping the tradition. Don't forget the reason why you're there. But it's not a bonfire night bonfire. It's not the 5th of November. It's not the gunpowder plot. It's a July bonfire. It's the Glorious Revolution. It's the Battle of the Boyne. And all the bells and whistles could get added onto that to make it more attractive to families and everything else. But I still think it has continued for so long because it's there to commemorate and celebrate what happened.
It's a bit like the music and the interpretation of the music. Maybe you could compare it a bit to that, because you could have it. You still have your traditional, your Strathspeys and your reels, but you're bringing in something new to add on to it, to give it a more of a medley selection, if you want to call it. So you know, it's, you know, so but just about how we develop that, and you know, I hear exactly what you're saying about, you know, sticking with tradition and keeping it and remembering exactly what it is there for. But it's about, you know, how do we make it just a wee bit more better and
that's my view,
attractive.
because I'm a history anorak.
Yeah.
That's what really gets me going. I love history and tradition, and you know, the promotion and the maintenance, preservation of these traditions and why we do what we do. We're not always good at articulating it, but at the same time, in order for it to survive, it has to adapt, it has to evolve. And all the other pressures that are coming in now in terms of you know, environmental issues and sustainability and damaging the environment. And there are all these plates to spin and different balls to juggle. And it's managing to make that go. Now, I know that we referenced the Kilkeel pageant and around the bonfire, and they have the historical reenactors and the music concert with the different bands and everything else. That's great. But that's great if you have a big team that are there to organise it, and people in place in salary positions to organise that and to make the arrangements and to make sure the risk assessments are done and the public liability insurance is procured and that all the contracts are in place and everything is done, and liaising with the local council and the landowners, etc., etc., etc. You know, all of a sudden it's not as much fun when you start thinking about all the work that has to be done in the background. So big events take big money and a big workforce and a lot of time and preparation. So we need to train up people to have the skill sets to do that, to have the capacity to be able to draw down money for cultural activities, grants to help with community safety, marshalling training.
And that's back to our community hubs.
And that's back to community hubs, some
groups.
sort of community development organisation group that helps facilitate this, gives the advice, identifies areas where training is required, fills those gaps to allow the wider cultural fair to flourish and to grow and adapt. So it's an intricate sort of system. There's lots of wheels within wheels. A lot of the average public goes and says, "Oh, that was a great night, wasn't that great? Can't wait to next year." But already the next day, the arrangements are being made for next year. The planning starts, getting the volunteers involved, and it's massive. And we have to be very careful not to have burnout.
Yeah.
Because usually it's a small group of people doing these things, and there's only so long that could be sustained for before, say, right, I need a break from this.
Yeah. Like, and you would see that yourself, Brian, and I'm going back to your event in particular. You know, you're planning for
2027,
there
we're
you
at
go.
the minute.
I see you're already that far advanced, you know, in the planning. And again, down to a small group.
Very small team. But I'll go back
people.
to perception of bonfires is when the media, especially international media, they were all focused on a 110-foot bonfire for a world record. There was no reference at any stage of the significance of the 11th night or the history of it or anything like that. Yeah. So the perception from overseas is we're just building bonfires. And there's nothing, there's no reference to why or what for. And you're talking about volunteers. The tattoos run on a very, very small thing. And yeah, people burn out, but it's like every organisation, churches, bands, you'll have 2 or 3 key players there who do all the work and all the heavy lifting, but they can't sustain it forever.
Yeah.
And there's nobody coming in behind because there's no training and there's no encouragement for them to do it. I really believe that we really need to put money into that sort of infrastructure there at the back end, and the training of new Matthews that's going to tell this story in 25 years' time. And, you know, because every time I listen to him, I'm getting an education.
Yeah.
Of stuff I had no idea because it wasn't taught to me. It was never referenced to me in the past.
And that's where it has been good to talk all things Ulster-Scots.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've been doing here this evening. So look, it's been great. It's been first class, you know, having these open discussions, and I hope that we can have many more of these discussions. Just to wind things up a wee bit here and just to bring things to a close, I know we've all talked about music, and the music's a big part of being an Ulster Scot. Matthew, you're involved in the band. What is the instrument that you play?
I play the piccolo flute in the band.
The piccolo. And what band is it that you're?
Castlegore Amateur Flute Band.
Okay, and that's a competing band as well that plays within that circuit.
Yes.
As well. And Brian, yourself, any musical instruments that you play? Or have tried to play?
I started in a brass band. I played a second cornet for many years, and then I found drum major mace and a flourishing competition, and that
was the start of
that. Was the start of that, and it all started through a girl I went to school with. I was besotted by, because she was a world champion, and that's how I got into drum majoring. So yeah.
Yeah, like for myself and from my own background as well. Like I started when I was 9 years of age, but it was just went straight into drum majoring. But the process was, I was mad keen about drumming. So I was battering and banging at a drum. So I did a bit of that. I also tried to learn the pipe. So I can manage about a dozen tunes on the practice chanter, but that's as far as it ever went. Getting to the point that I don't think I had enough hot air in me to blow bagpipes.
Well, funny how that has changed.
But look here, it has been great. It's been great talking to you, and Matthew, thank you very much for coming along, and Brian, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you very much for joining us. That brings us to an end of our series discussing all things Ulster-Scots. I'm Alistair Patterson, and I hope you enjoy Ulster-Scots Voices.